September 14th, 2022. I know today is going to be different. Today is the first day I'm going to see a new specialist with a diagnosis in hand. That anxiety is still there because that's just kind of what I'm used to. The anxiety of having to argue my way into a doctor believing me or listening to me because they didn't know what I had. But now I have a diagnosis and I just know things are going to be so different. I'm so grateful that I chose to hang on as long as I did, because I just know things are going to be easier from here on out. I think in order for any of this to make sense, we're going to have to go back. My name is Tara Rule.
Hi, my name is Tara Rule.
I am a filmmaker, an actress, an artist, a musician, a writer, pretty much all things creative. But I am also sick. I have a rare genetic connective tissue disorder called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which affects pretty much every part of my body. I was always weird. I was always the awkward kid. You know, I got bullied for being too tall for my age and lanky and clumsy. And I was never really able to keep up with the other kids. I always just felt that it was a personal failure, that I wasn't trying hard enough. I still just never really felt right in my own body and my own skin, and I can't really describe it any other way. My childhood was complicated. There's evidence that I was a really happy kid. Things happened. I think it's kind of haunting to look back on these photos, to kind of see the light leave my eyes, getting the light back. I started feeling weird. Definitely in high school, but it got worse after high school. I would just have these transient episodes of weird. It just felt weird. I felt like something was off. I got really bad in college, and there were a number of times I had to leave in the middle of a lecture and call my mom and tell her that I thought I needed to go to the hospital. They said I just had anxiety, and I had a lot of reasons to believe that was the case. I went to trade school right after high school to be an esthetician. I didn't like that. I decided to get into mortuary science because I thought I wanted to be a funeral director. I didn't really have the heart or the stomach for it. I was going to school for something that I wasn't comfortable with. And during that time, my on-again, off-again boyfriend took his own life, so I had a lot of reasons to believe it was stress. After college, I began working at a funeral home, and I didn't agree with some of their practices, I'll put it that way. On top of that, I was just feeling worse and worse and worse, and eventually I got diagnosed with Lyme disease. I just was profoundly fatigued, confused, disoriented, and I thought really maybe it was stress from the job, so I quit. I began working at a local pet store, and I really liked my job. I got promoted very quickly after I was hired. I still didn't feel right sometimes, but things were definitely taking a turn in ways that weren't quite apparent to me. Over the summer months, I noted many changes that I'd outlined in below in the order in which they presented themselves. Weight loss, loss of energy, physical weakness, inability to concentrate on tasks, loss of ability to multitask, easily distracted, short-term memory problems, would stop task in the middle, forgetting she started a task, problems with the register and closing the drawer properly, change in the personality and attitude, easily agitated, Forgetting to lock doors at the end of the night. Due to these changes, I demoted Miss Rule from full-time key holder to part-time associate in hopes that the reduction in stress and workload would improve her performance. The following was noted that led to eventual termination of employment. Inability to perform simple tasks, difficulty communicating with customers and coworkers, feeling unwell, leaving early, calling out sick, standing and staring for extended periods of time, fixation on one task she could not be pulled away from, looking weak, exhausted, and pale. Miss Rule had shown great potential as a worker, and I was concerned for her health. I decided to give Miss Rule the task of painting the store in an attempt to not let her go as an employee. Even this task became too much for her, and her health continued to decline. You know, I was putting the business at risk. I would forget to close the register, and I would leave all the money in it and not count the register and leave the door open. I was just kind of like losing my mind. But the thing about losing your mind is you don't know you're losing your mind. But I did keep a journal during that time, and it's pretty evident something wasn't right. I actually found my old diary. It goes all the way back to like 2014, I think. And you can like see the progression of me getting sicker and sicker. And my mom kept bringing me to the doctor, and they're like, it's anxiety, it's just depression, it's anxiety, it's hormonal. My mom and I went on vacation to Cape Cod like we always do every year, and I was really having trouble walking, and I fell on the beach. My legs just gave out, and I couldn't get back up. My legs just stopped working. I started having seizures, and then and only then did they decide to take an MRI, and they found a lesion in my brain that they thought was a mass. And they essentially told me and my mother that it was probably likely to be brain cancer with all of the symptoms I was experiencing, and that I would likely be dead within 6 months. And that it was inoperable. I have been trying to make this episode for like, I don't know, over a month now, and the reason it's been taking so long is just going through all of this stuff, all the old pictures and videos has been so emotionally challenging, and I knew it would be. The thing I thought that would be the hardest to go through was to see how much pain I was in, but I know that, I know that, and the things I don't remember, I'll never remember. The thing I've been really, truly hiding from, the thing I've been avoiding. Is the guilt. And I know it's not my fault. But so many people that I love and that love me really truly thought I was going to die. How do you live with that? I was in the neurological ICU for 2 weeks. I don't remember much from that, but I did have a near-death experience. I was experiencing encephalitis, which explained a lot of my symptoms. Had it been caught earlier, had anyone taken me seriously, I wouldn't have ended up in a wheelchair. My boyfriend said I kind of breezed through the whole illness journey thing, and that I should talk more about it because it's important. And it's not something I should breeze through, but I just don't like talking about it. I was just at my primary care doctor with my mom, and we were in the waiting room. I just said, I'm gonna die. Like, I grabbed her hand, and she's like, no, you're not. And I was like, no, seriously, something's wrong. And next thing I knew, I was in an ambulance. And the next thing I knew after that, I woke up in a hospital. I was in the neuro ICU for 14 days. I remember them talking about me as if I couldn't hear them, as if I was like dead or asleep. And I remember people that I love coming in from like all over the place. But when they would leave the room, I would hear them crying in the hallway. I already felt so infantilized. I felt like, I couldn't walk, and I couldn't feed myself, and I couldn't use the bathroom myself, and having like nurses and doctors coming in and just like literally like wiping your ass for you. I learned to walk. I was in physical therapy for like a year, and I learned to walk and write and talk and try to do everything on my own again, because they told me I would never walk again, and I was like, no.
Did it.
Once I could walk and regain some of my strength, I just kind of started on corticosteroid treatment to help keep whatever was wrong at bay. And I just like couldn't get Social Security or disability. And I got one check, but due to an error, I stopped getting them. And instead of them just fixing it, I had to go through like a 5-year appeal. I didn't have health insurance, food stamps, nothing. I felt like a burden on my parents. So me and my boyfriend took a trip. We lived in the car and we traveled cross country. We were going to do the whole country. The other day he was like, yeah, that was you making up for lost time. And I forgot that's what I told him. It was more of a bucket list. You know, I wanted to see as much as I could. I didn't think I was going to live that long. We traveled as much as we could. And eventually I just kept losing weight and I couldn't keep food down. And I was getting weaker and weaker and weaker, and I had to come home. You know, one thing I don't talk about because it just seems silly is like, you know, the changes I saw in my body, especially with the corticosteroid treatment. It's just like my appearance changed so much and I didn't recognize myself. And, you know, I always thought I was like pretty or whatever, I guess, to an extent. Being sick and losing all the weight and the corticosteroid treatments and all of this, like, it really distorts your appearance. Like, I was losing so much weight, but I had all this weight in my face and my hair was falling out. You know, I see that when I look in the mirror a lot of the time. I see this like distorted version of myself. I used to be a lot more confident before all this. I don't know if I'll ever know what I look like or trust that I know what I look like. That seems like a silly part to be upset about because I survived, but you know, I never thought I'd have to work on these things, right? Like how it affected my self-esteem or my confidence. There was no incentive to work on like the psychological factors of this all along the way because, you know, you kind of can't. You have to put your feelings to the side. It's almost like you don't feel anything when you're going through stuff like this. And now it's like I have to feel all this stuff because emotions are like a living thing, right? They don't just go away. You can't just ignore them and they dissipate. It's like they live in you and they manifest in like weird different ways. I recorded that entire thing and I didn't have my face in it. And you know what? I'm not doing it again. It's my documentary, right? The corticosteroids they were giving me to just keep the inflammation down, it started to affect my adrenal glands, and they told me that staying on the corticosteroids would kill me faster than any condition that I might have would. I quickly went downhill without the corticosteroids, and the pain was extraordinary. And everything was shutting down. I was going into organ failure and I'm gonna say nobody wanted to help. You know, eventually I think I was more of a liability to doctors than anything else, and they kind of all gave up on me. I made an agreement with myself before doing anything. I gave myself 6 months to find a solution. And I put everything out there on the internet. I put all my tests on Reddit. I put all my imaging, blood work, everything. And I put it all out there. And, you know, one comment led to another, which eventually led me to some random hospital in New York City that I called and I said I didn't have a referral. I was pretty much just waiting to die, thinking about hospice, and I needed help. And I had boxes of all my records because my mom always kept them. And they said send everything over. And I got into the doctor that week. He was the first person to take me seriously in a really long time. And he spent like 3 hours with me. And at the end of it all, I was like, okay, so what do I have? And he said, I don't know. That's kind of what I was expecting. The one thing, a diagnosis is almost a relief. And that, I know that might sound abnormal to some people, but it's almost like no news is bad news because you just want an answer because you want there to be something you can do. So I got up and I started to leave and he said, where are you going? I'm like, well, you don't know what I have. Thank you for your time. And he said, well, I don't know exactly what you have, but I know how to treat it. I started a medication. It's a mix of chemotherapy and a drug they give to people who are getting an organ transplant to prevent the organ from rejecting. And it worked like immediately. It started to calm my immune system down. And over the past 5 years, I've been on that medication, and it has helped so much. I mean, I'm alive. He told me that my body was basically attacking itself. I think it was just like a tornado of a bunch of things at once. Stress. I got mono. Then immediately after mono, I got Lyme disease. And then right after Lyme disease, I got swine flu. Invasive treatment, invasive surgery. I was going into college for mortuary science, so I had to get all of these vaccines for bloodborne pathogens at once. Like hepatitis vaccines, one thing after another, tetanus shots, this shot. I got incorrectly diagnosed with von Willebrand's hemophilia. Misdiagnosis after misdiagnosis. Really intensive treatments for that. This medication. Try this treatment for multiple sclerosis. This one. Try this treatment for cancer. This one. Try this treatment for this and that. This one, like... I just think my body had enough. You know, I don't think any of these things on their own would have done much of anything. My system was overloaded with medications that I didn't need and that my body couldn't handle, and it turned into a full-blown autoimmune response. I guess my boyfriend wanted me to talk about it because he said it shows my tenacity and like unwillingness to give up. Like I never gave up. I just always kept pushing and searching for answers, and I've come a long way, you know. Some of my symptoms that were benign at first were getting worse and worse. A lot of fainting, blood pooling in my legs, profound fatigue, confusion, digestive issues. You know, my autoimmune markers were down. It didn't seem to be an autoimmune inflammation issue. You know, my doctor always said there's something wrong. There's something else that's there. The autoimmune response is not the issue. It's a symptom of whatever is not being treated, whatever is not found. I happened to go with my mom one day to her new primary care doctor because she really liked her. And she looked at me and she's like, "You have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome." And I was like, "What? What is that?" I thought I had found everything on the internet. Like I have scoured for years, and so has my mother, looking at every rare disease out there, and I had never heard of it. But she sent me to a genetic specialist, and I finally had an answer. Like the doctor literally looked at me and he was like, "This explains every single one of your symptoms." Ehlers-Danlos, it's a genetic disorder that affects connective tissue, and there's connective tissue in your brain and all your organs and your joints and your bones, everything, your skin. So it truly affects every part of the body. It was such a relief to know, just to know. One of my most debilitating symptoms is cluster headaches. They're also known as headaches because the pain is so unrelenting and awful that people take drastic measures to end the pain. My neurologist that I loved had retired a few months before, and that scared me to death. But now I had a diagnosis, so I was very certain that I was going to walk into a new doctor's office and say, "Hey, here's my diagnosis, which explains this symptom," and things were going to be so much easier. You know, when you don't have a diagnosis, trying to convince a doctor that it's not a mental illness issue or it's not anxiety, or trying to prove your credibility, I was like, wow, this is going to be so different now. So I was really excited to go to a new specialist as a newly diagnosed person to see all the new treatment options that were available to me. I should say the ones that should have been available to me.
I'm sorry, guys. I'm really trying here, but